Welcome to the podcast. It's the magical holidays. Time for Joe watching 60 Christmas movies in 60 days. Why, you might ask? Because it sounds like a crazy task to be watching 60 Christmas movies in 60 days. It'll be struggle, no I won't lie. By the halfway point I will lose my mind, but with your support I'm gonna be fine. So let's have a blast on this Christmas time. Join me now and let's find out about today's Christmas movie. Was it good or bad? Happy or sad? Is there another dead mom and dad? Let's get to it with no delay. It's your old pal Joe and he's happy to say welcome to Joe watches 60 Christmas movies in 60 days.
How's it going, everybody? It's me, it's your old pal Joe, and welcome to the second bonus episode, prologue episode. What have you? We're doing an episode, folks. It's just past the middle of October, and we're talking about Christmas movies. What better way can there be to exist? I can't think of any, but then again, maybe I just need a better imagination. Quick update on the Season 4 front. It's looking promising that we'll be able to do a Season 4. Now, whether I can physically and mentally do a Season 4, that's to be answered. And that is, in fact, the reason that Season 4 may exist, is simply to see how I survive, or succeed, or both. So just keep your eyes open and your ears open, and keep your mouth, as a teacher might say, keep your mouth shut. I don't mean that in a rude way, but this is a podcast, folks. This isn't a dialogue. That sounds so rude. Anyway, Season 4, hopefully, I'll be announcing something soon on social media. In the meantime, in between time, I'm here to talk to you about today's movie, my friends. It is entitled A Perfect Messy Holiday. And spoiler alert, it's not even a Christmas movie. They tricked me. They tricked me, but good. Holidays in the title, and the first 20 or 25 minutes, that's about Christmas in a way. After that, though, they got me. They got me. I'm watching people celebrate New Year's. I'm watching people celebrate normal days of the year. Not even talking about Christmas. What? You're not talking about Christmas. Why are we even here? What are we even doing here? Let's get started. As I like to say, probably too much. If we don't get started, we can't finish. We open on a Christmas carnival at night in a small English. That's right, English. This movie takes place in England, at least the first part of it. And yes, I was surprised when the main character started speaking with an English accent. We're in this small English town. Maybe it's a big English town. Maybe it's London, for all I can tell. The movie doesn't tell me, and it's not really important. But what I thought was noteworthy was that there was a Christmas carnival there, and the words have never been truer, that this was, in fact, a Christmas carnival, because there was a goddamn Ferris wheel there. We never got to investigate the Christmas carnival. I really wish a movie would take me into the insides of a Christmas carnival. Tell me about how they work. Tell me who's there. Tell me what they're doing. None of that's in this episode or in this movie. It's simply in the background, a Christmas carnival with a Christmas Ferris wheel. Can you imagine something grander than that? And no, I won't get on because I'm scared of heights. So we open a Christmas carnival. Eventually we settle inside of a bookstore where our main character Emily is currently working, and we hear her inner thoughts. Her inner monologue is a big part of the storytelling mechanism for this movie. She likes to romanticize her situations, but it's also how she tells us about the story that she's writing. She recites the events of the story through inner monologue. So you just got to get used to it. And I did, because I've already watched the movie. Emily explains that at this point she's working at a bookstore and she wants to tell us a story about a perfect, messy love, which is great because that's the title of the movie. Within the store, she finds a book and smiles. We find out it's an old edition, maybe the first edition of Pride and Prejudice. She talks to her boss, Rose, about how Elizabeth in the book needs to realize that Darcy was her true love. The boss notes it took Elizabeth quite a while, something like 400 pages before she realized it. And I guess she's not satisfied with that as an answer. She should know better. Elizabeth and Emily, actually, but let's not get there too soon. Her boss wants her to take the book as a gift. Emily puts up just the right amount of rejection, like, no, I can't. Oh, I can? I will. That's what you're supposed to do. Say no once, maybe 2 times, and then accept the gift because you know you really want it. The boss explains that this is a token for 10 years of service. I don't know how old Emily is. She's going through a change of life, not menopause. She's far too young for menopause. Although maybe there are special cases of menopause that take place earlier in life. We're not here to discuss this. We're here to talk about a movie that's not even a Christmas movie. So she's going through some sort of change in life. This is her last day at her bookstore job. But then she tells her friend just a little bit that she wants to look in for more bookstore work. Is this bookstore closing? Is she being let go? Was she a terrible employee, but Rose just wants to give her a book to get her out of her hair? We're never going to find out. But she's talking about going through a large change in her life. She's acting as if this is a big progression. So the first thing I think is, maybe she's graduating from college, which is entirely possible, given her age. Much more likely that she's graduating college than she's going through the great, wondrous fall of our female lives. And that would be menopause, I guess. I'm stuck. It's so tickled to me that I thought of that as a possibility for this young character. And it's just, I can't get past it. At the same time, though, she's going to talk about wanting to get jobs at other bookstores. And she's also been at this bookstore for 10 years. Her being about 23 or 24 makes sense. Her working there when she's 13, that does not make as much sense. We have to move past it, though. In response to the sentence I said about 10 minutes ago, that it's a token for 10 years of service, Emily says it wasn't service, Rose. I loved working with you, and here, with the books. Each one a perfect love. She actually called them my books, which they are not. Don't get the wrong idea. Just because you have one copy of Pride and Prejudice does not mean the rest of the books belong to you. Rose hopes that Emily goes forward and grasps her romantic destiny, and they hug. And then it got me thinking about the concept of a romantic destiny. Does everybody have a romantic destiny? And what is a romantic destiny? Is it where you are destined to be romantically? I guess sure. Okay, fine. Literally, yes, that's what it means. But what does it what does it really mean? Like, you can't avoid it? At one point, the love interest to be, Matt, I'll get to him in a moment, he asks about the difference between fate and destiny. And I did not have a good answer for that. So let's look it up. Let's look up Google, what do you think the difference between fate and destiny is? Let's see what the popular answer. Fate is something that is predetermined by an outside force, while destiny is determined by the choices and actions taken by an individual. I mean, I guess, but how can you determine? That means fate trumps destiny, right? Like, I can say I'm going to go to the grocery store, but if I'm hit by a car, so it was my fate to be hit by the car, but it wasn't my destiny to be hit by a car? Are we just mincing words here? Think of fate, it continues. Think of fate as something that is out of your control, while destiny is something that you can control through your choices and actions. Yeah, okay, fine. But up to the point where fate intervenes. Regardless, romantic destiny. That seems even sillier. She hopes she finds her romantic destiny. You don't gotta hope, Rose. It's on Emily. She needs to put the work in. Let's get back to the stupid movie. By the way, I didn't care for the movie. It's fine. None of the performances are abhorrent. The movie is a fine length. It just feels like by the end of the movie, nothing has happened. Let's see if it feels that way after we talk about it. We cut to Emily walking through the streets surrounding the area where the carnival is. She's clutching her new book in her arms. Saddish music plays in the background. Eventually, she stops outside of a jewelry store. She looks at... This is a weird sequence of events. She walks up to a building. You see that she's looking at the display window of a jewelry store. She looks inside. She smiles big as if she sees something in there that is meant for her. It's her neck destiny. And so she goes inside. And then she looks at all the different display cases. She then waves and says a quiet hello to the proprietor of the store. She looks at more of the display cases, and then she just leaves, and she continues on her journey. And I don't know what any of that means. I don't know what's happening here. Because she's not looking at... It's not explicitly stated that she's looking at something like engagement rings, because it's on her mind, you know. She's just looking at jewelry. In fact, the jewelry that we see her looking at through the display window on the outside is just necklaces, as far as I can tell. This serves no purpose. There's also no words spoken for about 2 minutes, and that doesn't sound like a long time, but I am desperate to find out what's happening in this movie, and for that, it felt like an eternity. It was my patient destiny to wait. Patience destiny? No, that's silly. You're pushing it too far, Joe. There's a car sitting in front of me. I'm on the podcast patio, BTW, and right before I began, an electric vehicle, which I could hear because it goes, it's quietly pulled up in front of me, and then backed into a car space opposite me. The podcast patio sits facing a parking lot. And then the gentleman got out of his car, walked around to the passenger side, pulled something out, opened the hood, closed the hood, and took a bag with handles, nice, not like a reusable bag, like a paper bag with handles, inside. And now the car sits opposite me with its headlights on, just blazing in my cornea. And I don't like that. I'm trying to do a podcast. I don't need my corneal destiny ruined by the likes of you. After the meandering visit to a jewelry store, we cut to Emily having drinks with her Australian friend Bianca. Yes, I was surprised that there was an Australian in this movie when I was also surprised that there was an English person in this movie. Just the movie is unfolding surprise after surprise. Again, her friend's name is Bianca. She's telling Bianca about her plans to contact a bunch of booksellers, apparently for work. Bianca thinks instead of doing that, young Emily needs to focus more on her unwritten romance novel. Quote, you know the romance novel you've been working on for years, the one about that guy and the girl, and they fall in love and it gets messy and they sort it out and they have a perfect life? That one. Emily brushes it off. It's not the right time. She's going to marry Jack first, and in 4 years' time she'll be raising a child, and that will be the right time for the book. Bianca knows that life doesn't work out perfectly. Look at her, for example, which is foreshadowing to something that will come up later. Emily understands and appreciates the thought. We learn that Jack isn't there because he's working late. He's a lawyer. We get a tiny montage of them drinking, and this really was a full-on montage, but it only lasted 30 seconds. So as soon as the music starts up, the music comes down. And it comes down just as they say, what is it they said? What was it? Cheers. I know that seems like a weird word to remember, but I wanted to say, like, when they said toast, no, they were kind of giving a toast. So they say cheers, they clink glasses, they take a drink, but then Bianca immediately spots someone outside. Oh no, Emily turns her head, and wouldn't you know, it's her lawyer boyfriend Jack making out with another woman. Emily walks off, and we don't hear what's happening next. We're just kind of looking at them through the window. She pulls Jack off of the woman. She yells at him. We can't hear any of this, as I said. She eventually walks off with Jack in tow. We then cut back to Emily and Bianca back in the bar, sitting by themselves and commiserating. Emily is now thoroughly drunk. We find out Jack has been seeing the other woman for 6 months, and he said he loves her. Emily says, but he was perfect. She sarcastically thanks Bianca for setting her up with Jack, and they laugh. Then Emily moans about how Jack was a catch, and they'd have been such a respectable couple, like her parents. And this is an element that they push throughout the movie, but I don't really think it goes anywhere. The idea is that Emily is supposed to be really concerned with a perfect type of life. She wants the perfect type of partner. She wants to have a kid by such and such date. Then she's going to work on her novel. She has all these plans. Now, we don't really get beyond a surface level amount of plans. The plans being that she wants to have a kid, be married, and then work on a novel. We don't really know anything beyond that. But then she starts talking about how her parents have a perfect relationship. And then eventually we meet her sister just for a scene. And her sister's super buttoned down, super uptight, and talking about things, I guess, that, I don't know, upper class people would talk about. None of this matches the Emily that we're presented with. So we have to assume it's aspirational, that she wants to be like these things because she thinks she's supposed to be like these things. But then once the movie gets going, she never says like that. She just talks about not wanting a messy relationship, which is understandable. You don't want a messy relationship. But then I just don't feel like this goes anywhere. And the movie spends a good amount of time setting all of this up before ignoring it for the rest of the running time. After all this tumult, Bianca suggests that since Emily doesn't have a job or a mortgage, why doesn't she just take 2 months and write? I don't know how things work in England. I've yet to live there or go there, but I suspect she may still need some sort of income. Since you don't have a job and you don't have a mortgage, why don't you just not do anything but write for 2 months? Well, how is she going to pay for rent? Where is she going? What is she doing? We eventually see her apartment, and she lives by herself as a full-on adult, just doing her own thing. Yes, she doesn't have a mortgage, but she has a rent. Still, Bianca suggests that she go somewhere warm and embrace life. Emily blows it off, but Bianca doubles down. Her brother has a friend who has a cousin who has you get the gist here. She runs off like 3 or 4 acquaintances who is coming to London for work. He's working on a new chimpanzee enclosure at the zoo. And I ask the notes at this point, what is she talking about? Emily replies, similarly, incredulous. What are you talking about? Are you trying to set me up again? Bianca says, no, that's not what I'm getting at. The visiting Australian is looking for someone to house sit back in Australia while he's in England. And he's looking for a place in England. maybe the two of them could swap places. That way she gets a couple of months, living it up on the Gold Coast or in Queens, northwest Wales, Queensland. I don't know all the areas of Australia, folks. But she gets to spend a couple of months in Australia during Christmas where it's warm there, and maybe write her book, and then this guy gets a place to stay while he's building a chimpanzee enclosure. Emily is not sold on this idea, and instead melts into a complaining mess about having to spend Christmas without a boyfriend and dealing with her family. We cut to the next morning. Emily awakes in a bed littered with tissues and a head littered with eggs. She looks over at her copy of Pride and Prejudice, flips through pages and puts it down. She then notices a photo on her nightstand of herself and Jack, and she tosses the photo on the floor. She then gets a text from Bianca with a photo showing off the point of view she would have if she went to Australia. And it's not. It's the beach. It's the ocean. That's what she sees. Her phone rings. It's her sister Porter. Her sister is completely buttoned down because we do that thing where you see the person who's talking on the phone call. And her sister her hair couldn't be pulled tighter into a ponytail. She has a sweater vest on, or maybe just a full-on sweater, I don't know. And a white shirt collar sticking up out of the top. She's very buttoned down, very proper. Probably prim, too. She's calling about Christmas arrangements, and we find out she's taking over for something that her mother is usually, their mother is usually in charge of, because the mom is busy taking time to help the father with his memoir. You see the type of family that she's coming from, but again, this doesn't really come up a lot in the future. Porter gives Emily a hard time when she realizes Emily has just awoken for the day. She also asks if Jack is coming to some lunch that they're having planned, and this is too much for Emily. She says she's not going to be at the lunch. In fact, she's not going to be with the family for Christmas because she, my friends, is going to Australia. And I write my notes. That's when I realized this movie is going to take place in Australia. With that, we get a short montage of sights in London, following by Emily leaving home with her bag. She takes one last look around her home, and boom, footage of a plane taking off, and boom, footage of a plane landing. We are in Australia, surfing, beaches, coastline city. Emily hops out of a cab and walks up to her new home. A bloke, you see what I'm doing here, a bloke walks up and offers to help with bags. She tells him what unit she's looking for, but he's more concerned with the realization that she's English. Buddy, tell me about it. He asks her out on a date, but she says no with the excuse of working on her book. He hopes they might see each other around and jogs off after introducing himself. He's James, by the way. As she watches him jog away, she does a big ooh, like she's really impressed with him. I guess he is super hot and super handsome. She walks into her unit and we find that there's a dog inside. She's surprised. And a half-naked man inside. She's still surprised. The shock of seeing Emily inside of the home causes the man to drop the towel, and buddy, she gets to see his entire penis. And the movie makes a big brouhaha about it, where she's staring at it and he's staring at her, and oh no, let me cover up. So he rushes into the next room and eventually finds his way back out, and he explains that he is Matt, the man that will eventually be staying at Emily's place. He missed his first flight, but now he's hurrying to catch his next one. I don't know how that works. How'd you miss the first one, and you're still hurrying for the second one? Regardless, he's just finishing up, and he's on his way out, and he tells his dog to stay, the way you might tell a dog to stay. But Emily's like, wait a minute, he's staying? That's not cool. She didn't know about that. And Matt says, well, okay, and he leaves. So now she has a dog. The dog is named Birdie, with a D, not like Birdie with a T, B-E-R-T, because that's my mom's name. My mom was not in this movie. We cut to Emily video chatting with Bianca, complaining about the dog. Bianca thinks the whole experience sounds wonderful, dog included. Emily then suddenly worries about Matt not taking care of her home while she's there, because she also has fish and plants that need taking care of. She begs Bianca to go over and keep an eye on things. Buddy, she's going to do that 150%. And it may sound impossible to keep an eye on things 150%. Bianca will find a way. We get an instrumental of Let It Snow done in a very rocking manner. It plays while we get shots of the beach and even some surfers dressed like Santa out in the water. Inside of her new home, Emily struggles to get working. She keeps adjusting her work table to make things just right, but none of it actually matters. Just as she finally starts typing, her laptop rings, and it's Matt in London video calling her. I don't know how he got her contact, I guess her email address, to do such a thing. He says he's checking in. He mentions that he found the local pub, which is where he's calling from. He will call from the local pub quite a bit in this movie. It's the same one that we saw Bianca and Emily in earlier. Emily complains about the dog. She asks about her apartment. Did he find her management package? And he says, yeah, but I also have just arrived. I haven't had time to read it yet. He assures her that he can take care of her plants. He's a landscape gardener. Couldn't be too hard. He's a landscape gardener? Then I guess they had to bring a landscape gardener all the way from Australia to help install a chimpanzee enclosure? I guess. She asks about her fish. He takes a long pause and says, don't worry, they'll be fine. She clarifies that there's only one fish. And he goes, nah worries, like an Australian might. And that's what the fish's name is. She does not answer what the fish's name is. Not once in this movie, to the best of my recollection, do we get to find out what the fish's name is. The fish, honestly, does not matter at all. But the movie feels like it has to, I think the movie feels like there has to be more for her to worry about than just her plants, because Matt's kind of a cool, laissez-faire, rolling with the punches kind of, Aussie bloke. Some might call him a larrikin, or I would just say that because I know that term and I want to impress everybody with my Australian slang. And so plants aren't enough. There's not enough, vested in that worry. So let's give her a fish too. But she's not going to even say why wouldn't they have her say what the name of the fish is? Regardless, she doesn't answer. Instead, she mentions a giant spider she found in the toilet. Matt says that's Nigel. He takes care of all the small spiders. Do you get it? He's joking, but he's probably also telling the truth. They chuckle and do that thing where there's an awkward romantic pause. He asks if they should stay in touch. She says yes and wishes him a Merry Christmas. It's not like the Christmas season he used to, he says. It's so cold. And for her, it's so hot. You get it. He tells her to make sure that she goes to the beach for Christmas. That's how they celebrate. They proclaim very long and pregnant goodbyes to one another, and she starts to write. And this is where we start getting her inner monologue voiceover for what she's writing. Lady Vivian had never seen such a slouch. Hair askew. How improper to come to court, looking as he did. Bernard seemed oblivious to her judgment. He continued with his story, trying to delight her with his tales of oceanic adventure. And if you couldn't tell, Lady Vivian is Emily, and Bernard is Matt. And isn't that cute? She's writing this potential new interest into her story. That's fun. What was her story going to be before? Because apparently she'd been working on this book for years. Bianca knew about it. You've been working on this book for years. Why don't you finish working on it? The book where such and such happens in this story? Why don't you finish working on it? Now she's just not working on that story, and now it's about Lady Bianca and a guy named Bernard. We cut to Emily on the beach. A couple of kids are delighted to see Birdie the dog with her. We find out their mom, Stella, and the kid, actually there's just one kid, they find out that they are neighbors, and they live a couple of houses up from Matt, and the kid is fond friends with Birdie the dog, and they both know and love Matt very much. We find out exactly how much they love him later on. In any case, Stella invites Emily to come around to her place that afternoon for drinks, and Emily is in. We then cut to Emily arriving at Stella's place with a bottle of wine in tow. Stella wants to introduce Emily to her brother. Who could that be? She says he's often out and about for work and is currently visiting from Dubai, and it's James the jogger. Emily is again breathless and wishes James a Merry Christmas. I guess it is Christmas Day, and that's how early we're getting done with this Christmas movie. Later, Emily and Stella drink champagne. James offers her a refill, and Stella notices how she's looking at James, her brother. Later on, Stella's daughter shows off her fairy garden in the backyard. She introduces all of her tiny fairies, concluding with one called Snowpot. That was the best I could understand it. We find out that this is her favorite. It was given her by Matt, and Emily thinks it's beautiful. Matt, the Australian that lives in London, just to remind you. Later in the evening, James sidles up to Emily and asks if she'd like to join him at some place, basically another date, and they make a great crab lasagna. At that same time, she gets a text from Matt confirming her fish is alive. He sent a photo, and Emily is smitten over that. James asks if she's interested in the offered date for some crab lasagna, but Emily rebuffs him again with the same excuse about writing her book. Later that night, Emily and Bianca catch up over a video call. Emily explains the whole ordeal about James, but she's not interested. She makes it clear. In fact, she's off men for a while. Bianca thinks that's boring. Back to Emily writing. Old Matt calls her on the laptop again. He's at the pub celebrating a late Christmas night. They update about their respective pet roommates, Birdie and the unnamed fish. So at this point, it's, say, I guess early morning. I don't know the time difference between London and Australia, but it's got to be a good chunk of the day. Let's find out. Yeah, it's about 12 hours, give or take. So I guess it is early in the morning and late at night for them respectively. Matt wants to hear about the plot of Emily's book. She explains it with these two potential lovers avoiding each other for a long time before giving in and living happily ever after. Matt laughs at the way she tells her tale and mentions that she's funny. She gets very serious and says, I am decidedly not funny. I chose serious rather than funny in the buffet of life. Matt decides to agree that, okay, you're not funny. You're hilarious. Emily won't bite on the compliments, and they move on to talking about their plans for the next day. She's going to be writing. He'll be sleeping off jet lag ahead of his work starting in a few days. The call concludes with a heartfelt Merry Christmas. They both sigh after the call ends. Later, Emily chills on the sofa and notices a framed photo sticking out from underneath the couch. She pulls it out to find a photo of Matt and some other girl. She huffs and makes a sad face. See, she knew it was too good to be true. He has a girlfriend, but he just hasn't mentioned it, nor has he behaved like it. Oh my gosh. It's now another day. We see Emily giving Bertie the dog a bath. This is, I think, outside with a hose. James jogs up, as he is wont to do, and invites her to Stella's place for New Year's Eve. Emily accepts. On New Year's Eve, Emily and Bianca catch up. This is before Emily has left for Stella's place. Bianca says James sounds like Emily's type. Bianca mentions also that she hasn't checked in on Emily's apartment yet. It's been a week. You are a bad friend, Bianca. Somehow Matt comes up in the conversation and Bianca wonders if maybe Emily's into him. Emily flashes back to seeing him naked and gets flustered. This is the only flashback in the movie, and it seems sort of out of place. She catches herself getting flustered and says, No, I'm not interested in Matt or James. I'm writing. Later that day, Emily is on her way out when her laptop rings. It's Matt. This is just when she's getting ready to go out the door, so she stops herself. She comes back. She answers the call. This is when I write, it feels like nothing is happening in this movie. Matt says he started his job at the zoo and had some downtime, so he'd figure he'd check in with Emily, so it's his work day. Emily acts a bit aloof, secretly angry about his presumed girlfriend. Matt asks about the progress of the book and specifically asks if Bernard and Lady Vivian have gotten together. Emily, mad at Matt in real life, decides to take it out on his alter ego, Bernard, and says no, they haven't gotten together. See, Bernard thinks that she's his true love, but Vivian isn't interested. They have nothing in common. She thinks there's a better match out there. Love is too high a risk to take on somebody that doesn't match with you well. You need a good foundation to build upon. They joke around a bit after this, and Matt again says that he thinks that Emily is funny. While this is going on, she gets a message from James and starts replying to him. Matt cuts through the distraction of the text message by telling her that nothing is perfect, referring to some hoo-ha she said about perfect romance or whatever. Anyway, he says nothing is perfect. When you find love, you should hold on to it with all you got. She asks what true love means to him. He says it's soulmates, the one person you're meant to be with forever. She reluctantly agrees. Fireworks start outside of her place, so they wish each other a happy new year. He asks if they get into a pretty deep conversation here. He asks if she's been in love. She has. She returns the question. He also has. He mentions how his ears goes red when he's in love. She laughs. She says it's the longest that she spent talking to someone like this. I don't know what that means. This is the longest I've spent talking to someone like this. You were going to marry the other guy, man. What are you talking about? Regardless, this causes Emily to ask about the girl in the photo. Matt gets very serious and says he doesn't want to talk about it, and he has to go, and he hangs up on her. Well, he doesn't just hang. They say goodbye, but it's a very stern goodbye. Emily is caught off guard and says it was nice talking to him. And that's when, actually, they say goodbye. I forgot I had that note there. Anyway, we see Emily hanging out with Stella. This is not New Year's Eve. In fact, she did not make it to New Year's Eve because of her evening spent talking to Matt. Hold on a second. How long did they talk? Because he was at work. He was supposed to be at work. It was just some downtime at work. But she was heading out for New Year's Eve, and it seemed like they were talking for a long time. This doesn't make any sense. Anyway, she apologizes to Stella and says she got caught up talking to Matt. Stella does a ooh with her face, not with her mouth, and says it was fine. She also says James will get over it. Apparently James, since he was the one that invited her to Stella's for New Year's, is a little bit annoyed that she never showed up. And I guess she also didn't say anything. That's rude. He did text her even. He even texted her. Stella thinks that he will get over it, and this is also a little bit of payback because he often gives women the slip like that. Emily asks about Matt. What's his deal? And she says, what you see is what you get with Matt. And I think that's not a thing. That's not a thing. By the way, let's give an update on the electric car that parked across from me. The lights are all still on. They are still on, and they are still burning holes into my collective retina. I don't like it. I can't look forward without getting the light in my eye. I don't want that in my life. So yeah, Matt is what you see is what you get. There was also something like, oh, he's a great bloke, he's a great guy, he's a great larrikin, he's a great dude, he's the best. He's what you see is what you get with Matt. Over in London, Matt sits in a robe reading. We find out he is reading Pride and Prejudice. There's a knock at the door. It's Bianca. Matt wasn't expecting anyone. Bianca jokes, I can tell, because he's wearing a pink robe, presumably belonging to Emily. He asks if Emily sent her to check up on things. That is a very loud car. I think you can still hear me. I'm going to talk over this loud car. All right, here's the thing. We have some new neighbors here. And one day I saw this little car, and it had the dual muffler thing. And it's so loud. And it's woken me up in the morning. And then another day I was out and parking my car, and I saw it, and it had towels wrapped over its mufflers. And apparently they don't have them on the mufflers now, because that was very loud, and I did not enjoy it, and that car's headlights are still in my eyes. So where was I at? Come on, that stupid car threw me off, guys. I'm a professional. Anyway, he asked if Emily sent her over there to check on him, and she says guilty as charged. He offers her some tea, and she instead pulls out a bottle of wine. She says, I don't normally just carry wine with me, but I just gone to the shop to get some. Do you want to share it with me? He goes to get glasses, and she checks his butt out. Ooh, a butt check. She also spies a photo of her and Emily and makes a conflicted face, like maybe I shouldn't be hitting on this guy I suspect my friend has feelings for. When Bianca notices which book he was reading, Pride and Prejudice, he explains that he was just trying to understand women. He asks, what's Emily like? Bianca runs through a quick description and says, why, are you interested? He says, no, she's not my type. Okay, I'm going to fast forward a little bit here, because this movie's not being very honest with its characters. We had Emily say that she had never had a conversation like that before with anyone else. And we know that she was literally engaged to be married to Jack. At least I presume they were engaged. Maybe she was just projecting that they were going to get married. But she had a long-term relationship with this bloke. And she's talking to Matt saying, I've never had a conversation, this long of a conversation, this deep of a conversation with someone before. Okay, fine. And Matt's talking to Bianca saying, oh, by the way, keep this in mind. Bianca, Matt, fellow Australians. And he's telling her, I just want to understand women. Spoiler alert, we're going to find out the girl, that fucking car, I can still hear it. It's not even within 150, 230, 100. It's not within 1,000 feet of me. Anyway, folks, let's calm down. So he says he's trying to understand women, and I can spoil this for you and say that the photo that Emily found under his couch. I hear that car again. Wow, I'm so mad at that car. So anyway, the photo I gotta get it together. The photo under the couch, it was of Matt and another lady. Turns out it's his old girlfriend who passed away. I forget, they might explain how she passed away. But she passed away. They were together for a very long time. She passed away in a terrible accident of some sort, and he's still struggling with it. That's why the photo was sort of hidden, but also still around. And that's also why he got so stern when Emily brought the photo up. He had, again, a very long-term girlfriend, a girlfriend who he still thinks about and who he still misses dearly. But yet he's saying, I'm just trying to understand women. And it seems like the movie's trying to really set these two characters and these archetypes, these cliches. Well, she's never really opened up with a guy like this before because she's so buttoned down and wants a perfect relationship or whatever. And him, he's just a buffoon clowning his way through life. He's the landscape gardener. You know, you can't take those seriously. But he's also just trying to understand women. Why are women the way they are? But we also know he had a long-term girlfriend that did not end because of some, misbehavior on anybody's part. It ended because of tragedy. So he does understand women, at least as much as he has to. The two of them sit and drink, and we jump back to Australia. Emily talks about her conversation with Matt on New Year's Eve and how he cut it short when she mentioned the photo she found. They're at Matt's place, I guess. So she pulls the photo out and shows it to Stella. We find out this was Charlotte, his childhood sweetheart. She died in a car crash 10 years ago. He's been pretty much single ever since. So Emily worked at a bookstore for 10 years, and he has been mourning his girlfriend for 10 years. Very different paths. Emily feels terrible for bringing it up. She had no idea. Stella says, don't worry, it'll be okay. I also think that maybe you and Matt could be a good match. Emily dismisses this. We live in different countries. Speaking of, back in London, Bianca and Matt are very giggly, with Bianca even resting her hand on his arm. He notices. We cut to Emily still talking to, no, they're not talking to Stella. She's by herself. She thinks about texting Matt, but decides against it, but only for a second. She then does text him. It's weird because sometimes it's a video call, sometimes it's a text, and it's never really explained why they make the decisions that they make between one or the other. So instead of texting him, she decides to actually call him. Actually, no, she sends him a text message first. We see it arrive, and we see that back in London, oh no, Matt and Bianca are making out on the couch. Jumping back to Emily, a few minutes pass by and she's getting a little fidgety. Why hasn't Matt replied to my text yet? So she decides to call him. We cut back to London and we see the phone ringing, but Matt and Bianca aren't on the couch anymore. My friends, they have moved to the bed. Matt ignores the phone call, which makes sense, he's busy, and Emily leaves a message. We then jump over to the zoo where Matt is going to work. I presume it's another day. It's like the next day. He's arriving at the zoo for work. I guess it could be later that same day. Whatever. He notices his phone. He looks at it and his phone buzzes and he looks at it and goes like, oh, what's this? And he has a voicemail from Emily. At a point in this movie later on, they're going to talk about some weird delay in messages going through. But that doesn't make any sense because the phone calls go directly through. He's calling her on a video call. She's calling him on a regular telephone line. Both of them immediate. But the messages get delayed by 12 hours? Doesn't make any sense. He finds out he has a voicemail. He listens to it. It's the message that we heard Emily leave. Basically just like, just checking in. Hope you're doing well. Give me a call. Something like that. He listens and he smiles big. We see Emily back in Australia going off on tiny adventures at a fruit stand, in a bookstore, at the beach with Birdie the dog, reading. We then cut back to Emily and Bianca catching up. Emily says her book isn't going very well. She can't seem to get Bernard and Vivian together. Bianca offers some ideas, but Emily changes the subject to whether Bianca has checked out her apartment yet. Bianca hesitates before saying she has. Then she adds briefly, before I got distracted, the fish are fine, the plants are fine. Then she hesitates. I thought she would say Matt is fine, but she didn't. Emily is confused. Bianca is surprised. Didn't you see this coming? Since you're the romance queen, it's Matt. Well, it's not a romance per se, she says, but he's so hot and the sex is so good. And this poor girl did not think any of this was coming. And her friend, who at this point comes off like a jerk, is like, oh, I bet you saw this coming, romance queen. I went over to check on your fish and I started making out and having sex with that guy that I think you're interested in. Emily looks like she's sick to her stomach. Bianca says, wait, what's wrong? Emily said, I don't need the details of what happened between the two of you. Bianca says, wait, are you interested? Emily says, no, I'm not. We live so far apart anyway. Bianca then feels bad knowing that that's kind of a lie. But Emily blows it off. There's no reason to feel bad. She tells Bianca to enjoy herself. And in fact, I'm going to go get a life for me, or for myself, or whatever. You know, she's going to go get a life. They hang up and Emily thinks to herself. We then cut to her writing. Her story takes a turn. Vivian decides to fully reject Bernard since they are so different. Vivian is sad but is committed to this decision. Just then Matt calls. Of course, it's a video call on the laptop, which works immediately and doesn't take 12 hours to go through. Emily is immediately short with him. She says, my BFF? Really? I thought we were talking. Matt is not confused, understands immediately where she's going, and says, you made it very clear that you weren't interested in me. Anyway, you're over there and I'm over here. Emily gets flustered. He asks, what's it all about? She says it's partially about you cutting things short on New Year's Eve. Matt says, look, me and Bianca, we have stuff in common. That's it. She accuses him of catching the first London bus that came along. It's a great way to avoid, and then she catches herself, and I presume she's going to say, getting over your last girlfriend or something pretty harsh like that. She tells him to forget about it. She thinks that they should text updates going forward instead of calling. He agrees. They hang up and each of them make faces in their own respective areas. Back to the story that she's writing, Bernard tries to kiss Vivian. She slaps him and says no man of his station has the right to kiss a lady like her. Emily shuts the laptop and notices James jogging by. She calls out to him and then runs downstairs to get his attention. He comes to her door and acts like she put him off by never coming to New Year's Eve. And I don't know how many days it's been since New Year's Eve. I don't know if it's been 1 day, if it's been 3 days. The movie does a terrible job of keeping me updated. But it also makes a point that these people are kind of mad at each other. Because if I didn't go to New Year's Eve, and then I go over the next day, and I'm in there with Stella, and Stella says, hey, my brother James is kind of annoyed you didn't come over on New Year's Eve. I might think, you know what? Let me send him a message. Let me just drop him a line saying, hey, I'm really sorry about that. Other things came up. Maybe I caught a bug. Maybe I was really feeling down and I just wanted to spend time by myself. Something. Instead, she says nothing to him. So he's a little annoyed with her. She then says, well, you know what? It wasn't a date. But she does ask him if he'd like to go out sometime. James is in. We see them having a lunch and then walking along the beach. The date ends at her door. He goes in for a kiss and, oh my, she returns the favor. We see her walking up the stairs inside, unsure of what has happened. We rejoin her typing again when she notices the battery in her mouse has died. She ruffles through Matt's drawers looking for replacement batteries when she finds a greeting card. It's just a generic, it's like a heart on a gray cardboard type of card, or cardstock type of card. Inside the card is a Post-it note, and on that Post-it note it reads, thank you for the gift of life. Signed, Stella. Emily is very confused. We jump ahead a bit. Emily and James are continuing to hang out. This time they're on the beach with Birdie. They kiss, and it leads us into a montage of them spending time together, while Emily narrates some of her story underneath. She concludes her story where Vivian has ended up with someone else, and his name is Sir Roger. Their love is a perfect match, like a hand in a glove. The end, she says. Later on, Stella arrives home to find Emily and James hanging out. She congratulates Emily on finishing her book. James is a bit put off because he didn't know she finished her book, which means that Emily texted or somehow communicated this to Stella, but not her boyfriend. Emily explains that she's not sure about the ending, so she didn't say anything. She's worried Vivian has ended up with the wrong chap. Stella asks, what's the title of your story? And Emily replies, Untidy Circumstances. James laughs out loud at this title. Untidy Circumstances? Really? Emily is hurt. For good reason. Because he's not into titles? This is them trying to force the narrative that, or the idea that they are not a perfect match after all. She just thinks they are. He's not into the things she's into. Now, they've been spending time together, days it seems like. You think it would have come up so far. Like, hey, I'm writing a book. And he would go, a book? That's for stupid people. Or something like that. No, it doesn't come up until she says the title. Has she not told him anything about this book? I get that he probably wouldn't have asked. But you think she might have said something like, oh, the book is about such and such. Anyway, he laughs at the title, which is just so mean. Anyway, the trio toasts to the book being done. We catch up with James and Emily spending time alone later that same visit. Emily asks if James knows whether Stella and Matt have ever been together. He says, I don't think so. Stella's life is pretty full with her daughter anyway. At that moment, he asks Emily to move with him back to Dubai. He has to go back soon. Emily is surprised to hear this. She doesn't give an answer, and they start kissing instead. Back in London, Matt and Bianca watch a movie version of Pride and Prejudice. He's surprised by some turn in the story and says they should be together. They're soulmates. Bianca says, you sound like Emily. They're not soulmates. They just happen to run into each other. It was convenient. Then she rattles off her theories of love and how they're all very non-romantic, and it's really off-putting to him to hear her talk about love, something apparently he holds dearly, in such trivial and kind of dismissive terms. She talks about how it's all about convenience and happenstance, leading to probably spending too long with someone who's only okay. He's very put off by this but doesn't say anything. Later on, we join Emily chatting with Bianca over a video call. She's updating Bianca on things when she catches herself. Wait, where are you? It looks like you're in a hospital. And that's when this movie does something remarkable. Again, all we join them what feels like mid-conversation. And Emily is talking. And this is happening, and this is happening, and wait, where are you? That looks like a hospital. And then we cut to see her screen, the video chat with Bianca. And Bianca is sitting. It's only chest up, but you can tell she is sitting in a hospital bed with a tiled wall behind her and an IV behind her. And how did Emily not notice any of that? As soon as whoever called the other one, as soon as the other party answered, I'd have been like, whoa, it looks like you're in a hospital. And instead, it takes minutes. Oh, wait, are you in a hospital? That looks like a hospital. There's an IV. There's a fucking IV in the shot, people. There's an IV in the shot. Before she lets Bianca answer, she says, aren't you still in remission? And this is the only mention of any type of remission or cancer that Bianca may have had. But this is the secret backstory for her, talking about, remember at the beginning of the movie, the foreshadowing I mentioned, when she tells Emily that life isn't planned and you never know what's going to happen. Bianca cuts off Emily's question and says, "Look, I don't even want you to suggest that I'm not in remission. No, I'm just at the wellness clinic for a grease and an oil change." Emily asks, "What does that mean?" Bianca says, "I've been feeling a bit run down, so I'm getting some B12 and such." And I don't know, this is the last we're going to find out about this. Bianca's health, any diagnosis, any of it, it's never going to be mentioned again. I think this is only there so that we get an idea for why Bianca behaves the way she does. But I also like to think, that's the wrong word. Sorry, Bianca, I don't like to think this. But when this happened, you think that maybe Bianca's going to get sick or something down the line. Because it's weird to I'm going to go to the wellness clinic and, get topped up with my B12. I'm feeling run down. When that happens in the story, there's usually a cause for being run down that you think will be solved by something like B12, and it turns out not to be the case. Bianca changes the subject and asks how things are going with James, with Emily explaining that he invited her to Dubai. Emily brushes off the notion of possibly moving to Dubai and asks about Bianca and Matt. Bianca can tell Emily is interested in Matt and calls her out. Emily again acts like she's not interested, talking about how different they are after, they're still different people, whatever. Bianca rattles off a ton of romantic movies where people are similarly different, yet they still hit it off within the movie. She then tells Emily not to waste her life, which is it feels like foreshadowing for something bad happening to Bianca. Emily says she's not interested. She might as well go to Dubai. We cut to her leaving her apartment when she spies James talking to some woman outside. She kneels down to hide, also to spy on James, and ends up with her knee in dog poop. As she tries to clean herself up, James notices her and walks over. He asks what's going on, and Emily plays it off. Then he explains that he's really excited to spend the day together and go to the aviation museum. This whole thing with him talking to another woman, her being suspicious, it went nowhere. It was just there, I think, for the gag of her kneeling in dog shit. At the aviation museum, he's really into a plane on display. She is not. He keeps talking about it. She's bored. He goes on and on about it, and she just walks away like a shithead. Just walks away. Doesn't say, "I'm going to look around." Doesn't say anything. She just walks away. He keeps talking, though, and takes a few moments before he notices that she's gone, and he calls out to her. He also said, "Oh, that's right, something about a plane. They'll get to see some sort of special plane when they're in Dubai." And that's when he notices she's no longer there. We're done with that scene. Back to London. Matt is in a cafe looking at photos of Birdie the dog, and then in his phone he comes across some photos of Stella and her daughter, and then he comes across a photo of Charlotte. He gets sad and puts his phone away. We see him doing some work at the zoo. Back in Australia, we get a series of shots of Emily being bored around James. Eventually, we get a shot of Stella's daughter inviting Emily to her birthday party, and now it's back to Emily being bored around James. He's watching some sort of sports game, and she's being rude to him. He asks if she thought about Dubai. At first, she says she hasn't thought about it yet, but then she just says a very quiet no. And he says, "What?" She says, "I'm sorry." And that's when he knows what she said the first time, and he's very sad. Then her laptop rings, and it's Matt calling. So she takes the laptop, which is in front of her, and she's next to James. She picks up the laptop and goes to a desk behind him. This is in her place. It's her working desk. The desk is behind the couch, maybe 10 feet. And she answers the call. James immediately gets sucked back into the game and doesn't think about the fact that his relationship has just ended, even though he seemed very sad. He invited her to Dubai, which, based upon what Stella has said, is not his normal behavior. Him being into someone enough to invite her to live with him seems to be atypical for old James. But the movie treats him like he's a complete dunderhead. Well, she said she wasn't interested. He was sad for a second, and they got right back into watching sports. What a guy. So, yeah, Emily takes the call from Matt right behind James as he's watching whatever match he's watching. Matt says it's been a while and he thought he'd check in. Emily says we're only supposed to be texting, and then turns the laptop to show Matt that James is there. Matt is surprised. Emily mentions Bianca, and Matt says, "Look, we're only casual." Bianca knows that, Plus, why do you care? I'm not your type. Emily yells, well, it's true. And when she yells loud enough that James turns around, he sees what's going on, and he sees Matt on the laptop. They greet each other very politely, but also in a way that's kind of uncomfortable. Matt then on the video call says, I'm out, and hangs up. Emily is super sad now. She goes and stands at the window by the balcony and is quietly crying to herself. She texts Bianca. When she picks up her phone to text Bianca, I don't remember. Oh, yeah, that's right. I do have what she says. But anyway, she picks up her phone to text Bianca, and she opens the texting bubble, and she starts typing, and there are no prior texts to her best friend, Bianca. It's such a small thing. If you've listened to other seasons of this show, you know how dumb it is to me that the people making the movie can't spend 5 minutes making up fake texts to put in the screen so it looks like this isn't their first ever text message. Regardless, this is what she texted her best friend. Just dumped James. Only date I've got is an 8-year-old's birthday party. All good. Would rather be alone. XX. She sends it and cries. We cut to Bianca at a coffee shop. She suddenly gets Emily's text and calls her. She apologizes and says she only just got the text. We see that back in Australia, Emily's in bed. It has to be a good 8 hours later. Why does it take so long for texts to go through? Why does it take so long for voicemails to go through? Why are calls immediate? Emily says, it's fine. I'm already feeling better. I'm okay. Bianca asks what happened. Emily says she's figured out that they weren't right for each other. Bianca says, well, Matt's going to be pleased. He didn't think that James was a good fit with you. So that means in the 8 hours since she texted Bianca, Bianca has spent time with Matt. Matt said, did you know that she's dating James? They're not a good fit for one another. Unless he knew already, but he seems surprised to see James. Emily wonders how Matt could ever know who's good for her. He's so opinionated and so annoying. Bianca says, you know what? I might know someone who's right for you. And Emily shuts her down. I'm done with relationships. And I don't know whether this was really Bianca trying to set her up with somebody else. We get more shots of sad Emily walking around town. We get some sad Matt in the pub. It's the one place that they have in London. He's also at the zoo. Just lots of sad shots of them walking around or existing. Eventually, we end on Matt and Bianca hanging out at the apartment. He asks if the rainy, gray days in London ever get her down. She says not really. He talks about his job being done soon. He thinks about home and how he's going to miss the birthday of Stella's daughter in a few days. He's so sad about it. He then admits to Bianca that the little girl, she's his. He donated his sperm, or as he puts it in the movie, as an adult. I donated mine, and then wiggles his finger across his chest to show that the sperm is swimming. I donated my, wiggle, wiggle, wiggle hand. Just say sperm. I donated my sperm. He says he needs to go home. I need to see my little girl. He tells Bianca that it's been good, though. She agrees. She also tells him not to worry about them. They're like a pair of old shoes. They've worn them out, and now it's time to throw them out. I don't know. Did she say out twice, or did I write out too many times? She tells him to go home and to talk to Emily. Matt agrees. Over in Australia, Emily gets a text message inviting her to a meeting with a publisher, but it's back in London. I wonder if this message took 8 hours to arrive. This means that Emily needs to pack to go back to London. We jump ahead to a new day as she hangs out with I think it's the next day, as she hangs out with Stella's daughter. We find out that she's leaving the next day. Emily will still be able to go to the birthday party, though. They start talking about the little girl's bike that she has with her. We find out that Matt gave her that bike. In fact, he's given her all of her bikes that she's ever had. She's about 10, I think. We're going to find out here how old she's turning. But let's say she's about 10. This makes Emily curious. Why would Matt buy her all of these bikes? She picks up her phone and she tries to call Matt. Unfortunately, she gets his voicemail. She leaves a message saying she's leaving earlier than planned and tells him about her book being, I guess, published. Now it's party time. It's birthday party time. The little girl and her friends play in the yard with their fairies as the adults watch on. Stella tells Emily how much she'll miss her. We also see James with a new lady because he moves fast. Maybe this was the blonde lady that Emily saw him talking to. Emily explains that she has to leave right from the party. Wait a minute. That seems dangerous. So that means the party was the next day? Okay, fine. It doesn't matter. I probably made a mistake somewhere. We also find out that Emily's planning to avoid Matt when she gets back to London. In fact, is not going to stay at her own place until Matt heads back to Australia. But just then, wouldn't you know it, Matt walks in. Emily is stunned. When Matt greets the little girl, Emily suddenly thinks that maybe he's in a relationship with Stella. This is despite the fact that Stella has never mentioned this, and despite the fact that Stella has suggested that they would be a good match together. But she seems all skeeved out when he's picking up this little girl and giving Stella a big hug. She seems so put off by it. We cut to Emily brooding by herself. Stella walks up and explains the situation. She says, look, he just donated sperm so I could have a kid. My biological clock was ticking. She was going through the great change in life. She was leaving her bookstore job. Anyway, Matt offered to donate. This makes Emily mad. She says, why is he so nice? But now this whole situation is so messy. None of this was planned, and it's a mess. She also quotes her mom, and she says she's quoting her mom. Like Mom always says, life is cleaner and more organized. Matt walks up to talk to Emily. We find out Matt's phone died on the flight, and he hasn't had time to charge it. And I thought that this was so stupid. Of all the contrivances to give these characters reasons to not communicate. And by the way, I suspect the reasons that messages, quote unquote, take a long time to go through is because there's different time zones. Otherwise, we'd have to have characters waking up every day to these new messages that occurred to somebody else in the late night. So, Emily's going to say like, hey, I broke up with my boyfriend. We'd have to show Bianca wake up the next morning, but we don't want her texting or contacting her early in the morning because that would be middle of the night for Emily. So we can't have it that way. So my point is, this is another contrivance. He's on the plane. His phone dies. He gets to a house that is 2 doors down from where he lives. And presumably they have phone chargers there. And instead of charging his phone, because who knows what else he's missed? Who knows what other important messages are in there? Who knows what's happening? Instead, he just hangs out at the party for, a half hour until eventually he talks to Emily and says, sorry, I missed your call. My phone died, and I just don't give a shit. Emily tells him about her impending departure because he did not know it. That was what the message was. He's sad, but then happy to hear that her book's going to get published. He asks her to stay. She asks about Bianca. He says, look, that was just a thing with 2 Aussies in London. I'm home now. He asks her to postpone her trip for a week. This is a trip to talk to a publisher, which is what her dream has been for her bad story. Emily gets upset and thinks, wait, you wanted me to postpone it for a week? Well, that must mean you don't want to commit to me, which doesn't make any sense. And he goes, wait, no, that's not what I mean. And she goes, see, you don't want to commit to me. You just want me back for a week. And it just goes on and on where he says it, and then she accepts it in some bad way, and then he corrects himself, and she receives it in some bad way. She says, I never should have. And there's a long pause, and he says, what? And she says, fallen for you. And he says, really? And she says, yes, you just know it, right? The music swells, and she says she has to go. She points out that his ears are red. And there are still 10 minutes left in this movie. Well, only 5, because there's like 5 minutes of credits. As she gathers her bags back at her apartment, or Matt's home, Emily looks around and with a sad face. Back at the party, Matt is sad. Stella tries to comfort him. She mentions how he hasn't had a serious relationship since Charlotte died a decade ago. Maybe this is the time. Stella also points out that his ears are red, just the way they always get red when he's with the little girl. Which, okay, all right, fine. He says, well, yeah, it's because I forget, they said the little girl's name, but he says, yeah, it's because I love the little girl. And this is when it clicks for him that he must love Emily? This is when it clicks? Not when he asked her to stay an extra week? He rushes back to his place, but finds Emily has already departed. He's very sad. But then he sees that her bags are still in the closet. Wait, I thought she left. He rushes out and he looks around and he runs off calling her name, and they have him calling her name far too often for this not to be funny. Emily, 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 Emily. He's running through the streets. Emily, Emily. Eventually he finds her sitting on a beach. He runs over. She smiles and points out his ears are red, and they are going so hard into his ears being red. They mentioned it once earlier, but now they can't stop talking about it. He says, we should give it a go. She says it could be messy, and he says messy sounds perfect. They kiss. Eventually he picks her up, but just for a second, then he puts her back down. And then they kiss again. We fade to a day at the beach with Matt, Emily, and the little girl. Emily narrates about how all of this is how she ended up with her perfect, messy love. And that makes me think that the movie was supposed to be called Perfect Messy Love. And instead, because they wanted it to be a Christmas movie for dopes like me, they called it Perfect Messy Holiday. Then we get a montage of different happy scenes with all of our characters, and then there's credits. and the movie is over. I don't have my full list of tropes here, but I can guarantee you none of them apply here. This is not a Christmas movie. It is also not a movie that I enjoyed very much. It's just a really small movie that doesn't really feel like it has everything mapped out. It just has a general idea of what it's trying to accomplish. And why did that woman not realize that Bianca was in the hospital? Anyway, that's it. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, if you're concerned about me, and you should be, reach out to me at JOEMOC on basically all forms of social media. That's it for now. I'll catch up with you, hopefully, October 27th. We can get this party kicked off for Season 4 of Joe Watches 60 Christmas Movies in 60 days. Until, hopefully, then, take care. I'll talk to you later.